Yes, hello everybody, and welcome back once again to the Dynasty Hotseat, the only Dynasty show out there that is a certified inferno. And today we got a brand new guest on the show. Always love it whenever we get some new people on the show. We got Richard Jones on the show today. You can follow him over on X at Richard A Jones 13. Richard, great to see you, my friend. How are you doing this fine day?
Yeah, doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on. I've been a long time Ravens fan from the UK, and looking forward to having a great chat about fantasy tonight.
Yeah, can't wait to get into it. And Richard as well, for any Ravens fans listening, Tom Strachan, I'm talking to you right now. You run a pretty cool Instagram account, or you've got a big deal to do with this with UK Ravens Instagram account, right? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I can't claim to be the admin or anything, but you can follow at _UK Ravens, and you see lots of cool content on there. So the creator Foz, it really enjoys playing around with the AI and doing some AI muscled Ravens for your enjoyment.
Absolutely love AI. Massive right now, isn't it? Especially in the fantasy world, seems to be taking over a little bit. I'm seeing a lot of AI stuff. I had a guest on a few months ago, Ronnie, who was big into AI. What do you make of all that, Richard? Do you think eventually all of us analysts here are just going to be taking over, and AI is just going to end up being the thing that people watch?
Well, I know one chap who I was in a rookie draft with the other week certainly was asking AI on who he should pick. So we'll see how that one turns out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we need a couple of years to fully see if the AI bots are smarter than us. I'm gonna back us for now, Richard, at least anyway. And I'm sure we'll be backing us after we get through our 2024 mock draft for these new rookies, which we're going to dive into right in a minute. And by the way, welcome to any new listeners as well. If you've not already, hit that like and that subscribe button. I'm sure you will definitely enjoy the show. And to any returning viewers, hey, welcome back. Great to see you again. So, Richard, before we dive into the mock draft, just a super quick note. What do you make of this 24 class in general? How does it stand up versus other classes in recent memory for you?
Well, I think, for fantasy purposes, it's a really exciting draft. So very much heavy on the offensive side of the ball, which, is great for us. I mean, was it 5 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks?
6 even, was it?
Six. I knew I'd well, Michael Penix, very forgettable from a fantasy point of view, so I can be forgiven. But yeah, absolutely chock full of talent. Whether so whatever you need on your team, I'm sure you will find a guy to suit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those interesting ones where there were 14, I think, if not more, 14 sort of fantasy weapons that you can draft in your offensive team taken in that first round. So we know for a fact that you've got multiple players taken in the first round that are going to fall into round 2 in your rookie drafts, which isn't something that happens every single year. So I think that's pretty cool about this class. And we're gonna find out who you're taking in the first round, who you're taking in the second round, as we pull up our draft board. Because Richard, you're gonna make every single pick here. We're gonna chat through a couple of them. Now, some of these guys we don't need to talk about too much because I think most of the things that have that have been said about them, that's all we really need to hear. But just so everyone listening knows, we know it's going to be a super flex. We've not got a tight end premium. Richard, if you were on the clock at 1-1, who would your pick be? And is it always the same guy, or is it a different 1-1 for you, depending on what draft you're in?
Yeah, look, I think for most teams out there, Caleb Williams is the obvious pick and the pick I'm going to make. One can imagine a scenario where you could be absolutely stacked at quarterback and consider a Marvin Harrison. But, as I say, from the majority of players, Caleb is the pick, and you should be running that to the podium.
Yeah, it's at this stage, Richard, for me, it's let's not overthink things here, right? Let's not get too fancy or too cute. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be taking Caleb Williams at the 1-1-2. So I think you're spot on there. And Marvin Harrison's a super interesting guy, really interesting prospect. But if Caleb Williams hits and Marvin Harrison hits, Caleb Williams will be more valuable. That is just the way Superflex works, in my opinion. And that makes an interesting conversation then for the 102, because this is where I start to think about Marvin Harrison Jr. or, maybe one of these other quarterbacks. Where are you sitting right now, Richard, at the 102? And is it a unanimous pick for you?
Yeah, I mean, in lots of ways, I think this draft starts at 102. And, I've certainly seen lots of people trying to trade into that slot. And to be honest, they all want to trade for Marvin Harrison. And I can get behind that. I think Caleb is a surefire thing as much as first-round quarterbacks are. With the bust rate of rookie quarterbacks in general and in the first round, I think you take the surefire thing in the wide receiver prospect.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's kind of where I'm leaning now at the minute as well. Is going with Marvin Harrison Jr. at 2. I think it's not quite unanimous for me. I would say maybe a 7 times out of 10. I still have like a Jaden Daniels in the same sort of tier as Marvin Harrison Jr. So I still think though Harrison is at the top of that tier for sure. No one's really spoken about the landing spot. We've heard lots of landing spot chat about a lot of these receivers. Happy with the landing spot?
I think it's a great landing spot for me. Certainly undisputed in Arizona there as the wide receiver 1. So, not that I think the player would challenge him for that wide receiver 1 role, but, we see Hollywood Brown moving over to KC. And really, Kyler Murray is going to be absolutely desperate to get the ball to MHJ.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really, really nice landing spot there. Kyler Murray, somehow Kyler Murray's gone to become this kind of underrated quarterback. I think his value is going to spring right back up again thanks to Marvin Harrison Jr. So he's locked in at 2. Where are you going at pick number 3 then?
Yeah, so I think you have to circle back around to the quarterback value here, and you know what? If Jaden Daniels is good enough for the Commanders, then he's good enough for me at that slot.
Yep. Yeah, Jaden Daniels, he's really, I keep harkening back to this sort of Anthony Richardson sort of chatter that was going on last year, where it's kind of like you have to take Jaden Daniels here, even though this could end up blowing up in your face, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think, he offers the dual threat, which we can't undervalue in fantasy. And yeah, you know what? Perhaps he does benefit from Richardson, who, in a small sample size, surprised us all with how competent he looked for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, he was electric while it lasted, and I think Jaden Daniels as well, much better thrower of the ball as well than actually Richardson showed in college. So I'm expecting Daniels to do quite well at Washington. And what do you make of the weapons he has over there? Like not bad, right? Jahan Dotson expected to spring back. Terry McLaurin, pretty good receiver. It's not like he's landed in a terrible spot, which a lot of these quarterbacks do whenever they're drafted so high.
Yeah, absolutely. He has got some weapons to throw to. I think potentially what you want to see for your rookie quarterback is a nice tight end safety blanket, which, I'm not convinced the Commanders will have. But yeah, you know what? He's got better situations than others, and that might lead nicely into my next pick.
Oh yeah, well, don't tease us, Richard. Tell us who you going with next.
Yeah, so potentially the first slight shock of the draft. I'm going away from ADP here, and I'm going JJ McCarthy.
Love it. Do you know, we just spoke about the importance of quarterback, right? So I reckon that's where you're going to go down here, right? Tell us about JJ.
Look, I just think your choice here is Drake May, JJ McCarthy. McCarthy has been drafted into potentially the best situation a rookie quarterback could hope. And I think as a fantasy owner, we will find out very quickly if he is the guy. If he can't make it work with JJ at receiver, JJ to JJ connection, TJ Hawkinson will probably be limited to start the season with that late ACL, but from about mid-season onwards, he will have Hawkinson as a very reliable weapon. Just spoke about the importance of a tight end, and yeah, you know what? I feel so much better about that landing spot than I would for Drake May.
Yeah, I think it was a great landing spot, and I've sort of said to quite a lot of criticism online, but Kirk Cousins before Justin Jefferson, that guy was not producing wide receiver ones. That just was not happening. And I think it happened once with Stephon Diggs, and that was it throughout his entire career. Then Justin Jefferson came along and everything sort of exploded. So if anyone is going to make things easier for a rookie quarterback, it's going to be a guy like Justin Jefferson. He is good enough to make even, average quarterbacks look super, super competent in the NFL. And JJ is just going to be excited. He actually gets to throw the ball, Richard, right? He's going to be delighted.
I know. We might be able to see, we might be able to see him actually cut loose and maybe see if we can get the deep ball out of him.
Yeah. Also, sneaky fast, right? People aren't really speaking about that too much. JJ McCarthy, really good athlete. I expect him to have one of those like sort of sneaky high rushing seasons where it's something we don't quite expect. Not obviously to the extent of, oh my goodness, Justin Fields levels where he realized what a good athlete he was, but I reckon he's going to be up there towards the top end of quarterbacks in terms of rushing yards too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's just the way that the college football is producing these guys these days. I think we're starting, somebody, if I'm talking, in the last sort of 10 years, obviously that Cam Newton mold of, deploying the legs when needed. And obviously we see that with Lamar Jackson at the Ravens. And I mean, what it provides these quarterbacks is a good, safe floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Super safe floor for JJ McCarthy, I think. And you had mentioned there it's between JJ and Drake May. Is Drake May who you're going with next at the 105?
I'm actually not. So I was thinking, if I was thinking who I'm picking between the two quarterbacks, it would be JJ. I think, here it'd be sensible to go with Malik Neighbors, a guy who I'm sure just for clickbait purposes, but some analysts were claiming to have ahead of MHJ. Look, I think he goes into an okay situation. I don't think the Giants are really where you want them to be as an offense, but they've made the decision to move away from Saquon. If Devin Singletary is your running back one in New York, then the chances are they're going to look to pass that ball a bit more, and Neighbors will be the best pass catcher in that room.
Yeah, I think Neighbors is just in for a gigantic amount of targets coming his way because there's not really a huge amount of top tier weapons to throw to. I think, am I right in saying, Richard, did the Giants pick up Brian Burns? Is that correct? Did they pick him up?
Yeah, I believe so. Sorry, I would just have to Google that myself.
It's in the back of my head, but I'm pretty sure they have to pair up with a Kayvon Thibodeau on the other side of the board. Like that's not an easy rollover like maybe the Giants were last year. I think they're going to be much stronger defensively. So I'm hoping that they can get the ball in Daniel Jones's hands more often than they could last year.
Sorry, you were correct. He is a New York Giant.
Yeah, so I think the Giants are in much better shape. I think they'll be able to get the ball in the hands of Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I think what worries me about that team, I don't have any faith really in the offensive line's ability to protect Daniel Jones, and one would hope for Neighbors' sake that he is able to be that kind of safety blanket that Daniel Jones needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Neighbors going to be just fine. He's so talented. That's just like you can't let him slip for further than here, really. I don't think so. We've locked in Neighbors. Who's following him then? 106, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just sticking to the board here. I think Adunze has a fantastic opportunity to come
Mhm.
into the league, be draft mates with Caleb, and hopefully they form a bond that could be very productive for years to come.
Yeah, one thing I like about Odunze, obviously, he's not going to come in and be the guy right away. But I see so many similarities with Roma Dunze and Keenan Allen that I actually quite like them being in the same wide receiver room. I think Allen's a veteran that can come in and teach Dunze a couple of tips here and there that will ultimately make him a better professional overall. And we're playing Dynasty here. Patience is so key. I think if Odunze can sit behind and learn a little bit, then he's got these years to link up with Caleb. I think it's a smash pick at 106.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, so
What?
moving onwards.
Yep.
Perhaps unsurprisingly, I think the 107 is absolutely Drake May territory.
Yep.
I think he brings that quarterback value we've spoken about. Look, I don't know that Drake May will necessarily start the year. So they obviously they paid Jacoby Brissett, who can perhaps be that kind of bridge quarterback role. But I don't think that's a bad thing. We spoke about Adunze and the need for patience. I don't know that I need Drake May's confidence getting destroyed. Throw into very few weapons on a lackluster Patriots team. I am more than happy for him to take a back seat to start year one and sort of work his way into things.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people say that now where they're expecting Drake May to sit for a year. I, if I'm the Patriots, I'm throwing him in. Like I'm just like he's not a guy that for me seems like he's not really pro ready. If anything, like JJ McCarthy's less pro ready than a Drake May. I think obviously McCarthy is held by the weapons around him. I'm just like, I'm not playing Jacoby Brissett. If I'm a Patriots fan, I'm not happy if Brissett is playing. I just want to see Drake May as soon as possible. So I also wouldn't be shocked if they threw him in right away. Maybe not the best idea, as you hinted to, Richard, but I want to see it. Do you know, I want to see Drake May start week one?
Yeah, look, in terms of real life prospects, I'm very high on Drake May. I think for a long time was the consensus number 2 quarterback in the
Yeah.
class, and the weeks leading up to the draft, stories emerge, and quarterbacks, players in general fly up boards or fall down boards. And I think if I was picking in real life, Drake May would have been my pick at 102 to the Commanders, but obviously they went in a different direction.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how he ends up and falls out. But you're right. You mentioned it right at the start of the show. Quarterback busts happen all the time. Just look back at the last time we've seen so many quarterbacks come off the board this early. That was the Trevor Lawrence year. 3 of those guys. I mean, one of them is now Trevor's backup in Mac Jones. And then you got Trey Lance and Justin Fields, who are also backups. So it's amazing how quickly things can turn around. So it's going to happen to at least one of these guys, which is it's quite sad, but
yeah,
book it
and
in. It will happen.
You'd probably argue, 2 of them really, and it's I'll include Penix and in that, but if 2 of those 5 guys bust, and I suppose Bo Nix,
I think
then that's not a surprise. That's to be expected.
Yeah, I think we'll get to Bo Nix soon, but yeah, I reckon that's a bit of a layup for the bust one. But we'll get to him. We'll get to him soon, Richard. Who's following Drake May at 108 then?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go with Jonathan Brooks here.
Nice.
So I think this draft is allegedly kind of weak on those top end RBs. I don't know. I don't know if I buy it really. I think we see every single year RBs from left, right, centre, UDFAs, anybody being
Yeah.
given that opportunity and literally running away with it. And
Yeah.
some of the running backs in this draft will be very productive fantasy running backs for years to come until their team decides to pick another one in the fourth.
Yeah, they're just the only thing that's lacking is I think we've been spoiled maybe the last 2 years where there's been Bijan Robinson and Brees Hall, two like amazing prospects. Whereas this year we've got a lot of players that might have been the number two guy in those classes, all kind of bunched into one. I think if we lumped all these classes in together, we might not see these running backs, at the very top end of the top three, but we'd see quite a lot of them in that 5, 6, 7 range. So it's not super elite, but you got to hint at it, Richard. You don't even need to be super elite to be a good running back. Look at like some of the guys in the last couple of years that have burst onto the scene, like Isaiah Pacheco, like Kyron Williams. Not elite prospects, but here we are with them really helping you win championships, right?
Absolutely, and look, I think this one is a landing spot pick for me.
Yeah.
So the Panthers are clearly desperate to run the ball. They need to take pressure away from Bryce Young as best they can. I think they've invested, heavily on the offensive line. They pay two brand new guards big money. It seems to me that they are going to look to run the absolute cow skin off that football. And look, I don't think he's got massive competition in the place. Look, they paid a big money contract to Miles Sanders, who seemingly forgot how to be a football player. We'll see if he we'll see if he remembers. And you know what? I always forget his name, which is a shame because he was a decent RB2 for me last year. But they got the
Oh,
guy who
the Chuba Hubbard.
Cuba Hubbard, who they obviously thought would be a budget version of CMC and never quite ascended to that. Which to be fair, not many would.
Well, not many Canadians can make it in the NFL, as we know, Richard. There's only a couple, and Chuba, sadly, not one of them. Carolina, I think they're doing all the right things, which is really nice. I actually like to see that let's be honest, they should be embarrassed after the trade that ended up seeing them lose that number one pick. That's a real embarrassing time for a lot of the people over there at Carolina. So they've really got to double down on their efforts here and really try and claw back anything they can. But at the same time, Richard, I don't know if you've seen last year towards the end of the season when it was a bad team, their stadium was empty. So I'm kind of just like, you know what, screw you guys. You don't deserve a winning team if you're not going to go support your team when they're down.
Yeah, it seems a very dysfunctional franchise to me. I think this David Tapper has come in as a new owner. Seems to me that he spends most of his time throwing a tantrum rather than doing anything productive. Look, as much as the history books will say that it was a joint decision and that they all loved Bryce Young, there's enough mud in that water to suggest that the coach and the general manager probably fancied CJ Stroud, and that was an ownership decision.
How different things could have been, right? But hopefully Jonathan Brooks is the guy that can help turn the tide for them, and he's locked in at 1-8. Who's following him then at pick 1-9?
Yeah, so I think a really surprising fall from where most of us had him pre NFL draft, but Brock Bowers would be my 109. So obviously the consensus tight end one of the class. I don't think there's any arguments at all about his talent. But I feel like this happens to a prospect every single year. And last year it was Charbonnet, where we expect these guys to come in and make a fantastic impact, and they just get drafted to a pretty bad situation.
What do you think is the worst thing about that landing spot? Because that seems to be a common thread. I'm slightly more optimistic on it, I think, than others. But for you, what really stinks about the Raiders landing spot for Brock Bowers? Is it just Michael Mayer, or is it the whole organization?
Yeah, I think for me, look, Mike Mayer, was a very, very highly touted prospect. I think lots of people were expecting a big second year bounce from him. Um,
Hmm.
in a way, I think Mike Mayer followed the traditional kind of pattern of rookie tight ends in not necessarily having the biggest first year, very overshadowed by the fact Kincaid and Laporta were determined to break all records between them.
Yeah.
So I think lots of people were excited about Mike Mayer coming into this year, and I suppose the problem is trying to predict the usage now of the pair of them. Now, obviously, look, two tight ends can work perfectly well together in fantasy, but
Hmm.
it's a bit of a headache, and it's something that you don't necessarily want to be trying to figure out.
I think I was surprised last year, despite having Aiden O'Connell and despite being a slight mess for most of the year. I think both Devontae Adams and I'm blanking on his name. Myers, was it? Myers was there.
Yeah.
Whoever the wide receiver two was, both finished inside the top 24 wide receivers. This is really quite impressive. I would expect Bowers to come in and, while not taking too many targets away from Devontae Adams, who we know is going to get a ton, I think he's going to be, if he's lucky, the number two target there, which could be really, really interesting for his prospects. But Brock Bowers is a guy that I can almost see a buy window opening up if he doesn't hit the ground running because of the aforementioned Sam Laporta, because of Dalton Kincaid. We're expecting so much more of these young tight ends. If there is a dip in Brock Bowers, I'm going to buy it because Devontae Adams not going to be around forever. I think Bowers is good enough to be one of those rare cases where a tight end might just be that go-to weapon in the offense. Can you see a path for that for Brock Bowers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my prediction would be that Bowers is very much that move tight end weapon, and Maya is used in more of the kind of traditional blocking and
Yep.
going out on some pass routes tight end. It's interesting you say there's a buy window on Bowers, and look, I mean, at 109, the value is undisputably there. I suppose in terms of Dynasty more general, this is the buy window on Meyer. I'm sure there's an absolute fire sale on him, and
Yeah.
whether he's I think there's questions to be asked about Meyer in a year's time or so. You could see him traded away from the Raiders and actually given that opportunity.
That's a really good point, actually. You just assume that these guys are going to be on these teams forever, but more and more we're seeing people move teams whenever the situation isn't perfect. So you're right. Could be a sneaky time on a rebuilding team to go on and try and snag Michael Meyer for sure. So Bowers is locked in at 1-9. You got 3 picks left of the first round. Where are you going at 110?
So I'm gonna go with Lad McConkey here. So
Nice.
I think there's an idea out there, and look, we've experienced the full Greg Roman experience in Baltimore over recent years, and there's an idea out there that wide receivers are not productive, and I think that's false. Actually, I think the right wide receiver is very productive in that scheme. Teams are forced to respect the run, and that creates opportunities in the secondary for things such as play action. Um, you know, Hollywood Brown just about managed the 1,000-yard season in Baltimore whilst dropping an awful lot of balls, seemingly. So, look, I think Lad McConkey comes in with the opportunity to absolutely be the number one target. We saw them lose some wide receivers in the offseason, and I think wide receivers are productive in that offense.
And I know that play callers have their schemes and they have things that they like to do and they have things that they're like accustomed to doing. But I think we also have to remember that they're not well, mostly, let's say 99% of the time, they're not stupid, right? He knows exactly, like the Chargers know they have Justin Herbert, right? One of the best passers of the ball in the NFL. I would be shocked if we see the same pound the ball, pound the ball, pound the ball, don't let Herbert throw. That just, to me, seems too like short-sighted for anyone to even try and do. I think they're going to pass the ball more
Well,
than what people are thinking.
it's going to be interesting how that offense kind of interprets itself in um, LA, because in many respects Herbert is the opposite to Lamar, or was the
Yeah.
opposite to Lamar in, for instance, 2019 when Lamar won his first MVP award. So in 2019, Lamar was absolutely a stellar athlete on the ground and a good
Yeah.
thrower. Herbert is stellar through the air and a good athlete on the ground.
Yes.
So, I would expect there to be a good amount of passing game. I don't think we're going to see the kind of 32 ranked passing game, number one running game that we saw in Baltimore for several years.
Yeah.
And yeah, Lad McConkey has a great opportunity to carve out a huge role for himself.
Yeah, super excited to see what Lad can do for sure. He's definitely going to be open because that's what he's good at. So he's going to be open, and if Justin Herbert's allowed to throw the ball, which hopefully he will be, he'll be fine. Lad McConkey, plenty of time. So he's locked in at 10. Who are you going with next, Richard, at 111?
Yeah, so I think for me at 10, and I'm moving out of that first round actually. I'm going to go with Keon Coleman out of Buffalo. So once again, look, obviously not a first round pick, and I'm the first person to say that draft capital matters. But once again, that opportunity, clearly, I mean, Buffalo traded down with Kansas City. They knew what guy they were getting. They were absolutely zoned in on Keon Coleman. We've seen the Bills lose some wide receivers, and again, that opportunity to become Josh Allen's number one target.
The real interesting thing, and the real debate about Coleman I've seen is, where's he going to play? Because I think if people think he's going to be the big slot, they're super excited about that. But if people see he's going to play on the outside, then people are super worried that he's just going to be like another Gabe Davis boom bust guy on the Bills. I'm super interested with Keon Coleman. You know what's helping me though? I think he's a great dude. Like, like I don't know why, Richard. Do you get that as well? Like where you start rooting for players just because you hear a couple of interviews and like, damn, I really like this guy. I really hope he does well.
Yeah, I absolutely loved his introductory press conference where he was talking about buying winter coats in the summer and all of the rest of it.
What did he say? He was talking about golf, and he said he's not Tiger Woods, he's Tiger Wishy Woods or something like that. He was like a great little quote about, yeah, Tiger
Yeah,
Wish I Was. I think that's so
he
good.
seems like a
Like,
guy with a great sense of humor, doesn't take himself too seriously. And as you said, the discussion we just had about the charges, these people are not stupid. If Keon Coleman has the opportunity outside and it doesn't work out, then people at the Bills deserve to be fired if they then don't start to play him in his more natural position.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You have to experiment. They've got a full mini camp to figure it out. They got preseason. They got loads of time to figure out where you can put Keon Coleman. And these outside, if you really want to stretch the field, I mean, these outside speedsters, they're like a dime a dozen. There's plenty of them around in the NFL that they could pick up and use if they really wanted to stretch the field in that way and not waste Keon Coleman out there, not really playing to his best skill set. So love that. If that hits with Josh Allen, that's an absolute steal at 111 for sure. So who's rounding out the first round for you then,
Well,
Richard, at
I mean,
112?
this is an interesting one for me. And look, obviously, trades aside, the team picking number 12, you would expect to be quite stacked. Now,
Yeah.
for me, I'm going to go with Michael Penix.
Yep.
I think that is an absolute. If you are a kind of league winner picking at number 12, then you have your quarterbacks for the next 2 years, or and I think sticking him on your taxi squad, and hopefully you've still got the team to carry on competing, is an absolute winner of a move.
Yeah, I love this pick at 112 at the back. It's just sort of, it's so hard to maintain success in Dynasty just the way it works. But if you can use this late first to almost like what the Falcons are trying to do, right? Sort of keep that legacy rolling on whenever an older guy goes out the door. Yeah, I think this is great. Lock it on Michael Penix. Just please, if you're watching this, if you draft Michael Penix, don't do what so many people did with Jordan Love and sell too early. Let him take the field. He will play. Then decide.
Yeah, I think, obviously we're all hoping for the Jordan Love effect.
Yeah.
Look, Michael Penix has the opportunity to sit down for, barring another injury, he has the opportunity to sit down for 2 years, sit behind a very solid quarterback in Kirk Cousins, learn the schemes, get familiar with the players. You have to play the long game in Dynasty. And he is the perfect long game. How often do you get the 12th overall pick as a quarterback at the 112?
Never. Right. And maybe never again. This might be the only time that they'll ever see it. Just quickly on Michael Penix. This hasn't been spoken about enough, and it's not about Dynasty, but goddamn, Ian Rappaport, just keep your mouth closed, will you? Why'd you have to go ruin that for everybody? I wanted to see that like in person. I didn't like that Rappaport came out and kind of spoiled it for everyone. It's like, hey, look how many people I know. They're saying this. It's like, I don't want to hear from you, Rapp. If I do, I'll check your tweets, all right?
Yeah, it's really, I think it's poor, actually. It's a bit like, look at me, I know everyone. It's like, yes, we know that, Ian. Yeah. We're all constantly looking for your next update on X.
Yeah, exactly. Take a day off, guy. Right? Just take a day off. Right? Let's leave that. Hopefully next year, and we'll go spoiling anything. But now we're through round number 1, Richard. For round number 2, what we're going to do, just in the interest to save a little bit of time, I want you to give me your 3 picks in a row. So your 201, 202, and 203. And then we'll maybe choose one of those players to focus in on a little bit more and chat about. Does that sound good?
Yeah, perfect. So for me, I think we go Worthy, Nix, and Thomas.
Worthy, Nix, and Brian Thomas Jr. as well. Oh, we never locked in Bo Nix there. Sorry about that, Bo. Let's chat about Bo Nix since we didn't quite get him locked in first time around. Is this just because of the draft capital? Like, did you have Bo Nix here before, or is this just can't ignore the draft capital?
It's the draft capital and the fact he's a quarterback, but he screams absolute bust to me.
Me too. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, but I'm sure there've been players before that scream bust and have come in and, end up succeeding. I think he's maybe with the perfect head coach for his skill set. There's a chance there, right, Richard?
Look, everyone's got to punch his chance, but I think they've made the exact same mistake that Carolina made last year. You trade away your wide receiver 1, you draft a quarterback. Who on earth is the poor lad supposed to get the ball to?
I'm genuinely trying to think. Marvin Mims, right? Well, I suppose they took Troy Franklin later, right? That was a smart move, but
fourth round pick though, and perhaps he fell a bit. But if your 4th round pick, I mean, I think they have Cortland Sutton there still, but I think it's a bad Broncos team. He's going to get smashed about. His confidence is going to be destroyed, and I don't have many hopes for Paul Bo Nix.
Do we see Zach Wilson trot out for the Broncos this year? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, probably when Bo Nix is on injured reserve because he's been sacked too many times behind that offensive line.
Maybe Zach's been the answer this whole time, Richard. Maybe it was just the Jets that were killing Zach Wilson, and it's actually being him all along. Can you imagine that? There would definitely be a home field too if Zach Wilson can mount that comeback, right?
I mean, I like to see these guys succeed. So good luck to all of them. But I just can't see it. That quarterback room is horrible.
Yeah, it's real bad there. So let's see. I wonder who gets Russ's office, right? So let's move on. We got picks 4, 5, and 6 coming up. Who you going with there, Richard?
So I'm going to go with Ricky Pearsall. I'm going to
Yep.
go with Legat, and
Yep.
I'm going to go. Admittedly, I'm sticking with the board, but I'm going to go with Benson.
Nice. Let's talk maybe. I don't want to say that obviously not the biggest surprise because we've spoken about Michael Penix. I was pleasantly surprised at how high San Francisco took Ricky Pearsall at. What do you think stands out about him in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a very polished wide receiver. I think my big worry, actually, what stands out, I think we could be entering into a Jackson Smith and Jigma kind of situation where he's just got talented guys ahead of him. And
Yeah.
I don't know that we should be expecting a big season out of Ricky Pearsall. But again, it all comes back to playing that long game in Dynasty, and you've got to go with the draft capital and the fact that Brock Purdy is a very competent quarterback. And look, the organization, they are running that offense like clockwork, and you have to imagine that in time, Ricky Pearsall will be slotted right in, no pun intended, to absolutely play in that slot position.
The thing that I've seen most about Ricky Pearsall is but Brandon Ayuk's going to leave, so Pearsall can come in, and I think that's a slightly dangerous game because I can understand it whenever you're speaking about running backs because it is apples to apples. Then running back goes out, the team's probably going to give whatever running back comes in the same amount of carries. Doesn't quite work that way with the wide receiver position. If Brandon Ayuk goes out and let's say Brandon Ayuk has, let's pick like 80, 85 targets, right? That does not mean Ricky Pearsall is going to get 85 targets. It probably means Christian McCaffrey is going to get an extra 20. It probably means Debo's going to get an extra bit. George Kittle's going to want a bit more of the pie. So I think that's maybe not the mindset to take, is thinking if Ayuk leaves, then Pearsall's going to come in and take it automatically. I think it's going to be at least 2 years before we see much out of Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, I think it's quite dangerous as well. If you're picking a player because, you've plucked out of thin air that Ayuk is going to be traded across the league, then you're probably in for a disappointment. I think, at the moment, both the 49ers and Ayuk are just playing the game, aren't they? Ayuk wants some money. He cancels his Instagram. I don't really.
I'll show him.
I'm not really reading too much into that situation. I'm sure the 49ers are doing everything they can to keep somebody like Ayuk on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think Pearsall, in saying that, I mean, that's what taxi squads are for. I'm happy to take Pearsall around this range for sure. Set him on my taxi squad. Don't worry about him. And then when he finally has a real shake at it, I think he's talented enough and good enough to make an impact. But it'll take a few years for sure for Ricky. But that's fine. Taking someone in the second round, that might take a little bit of time to come on. So we've locked in Pearsall, Leggett, and Benson. Who are your next three then at 2-7, 2-8, and 2-9?
Yeah, so I go Blake Corum here.
Yep.
I think Jalen Polk and then Adonai Mitchell.
Let's go Corum, Polk, and Mitchell. I could feel you chomping at the bit there, Richard, to talk about Blake Corum. I'll not deny you that opportunity. What do you got to say about Blake?
I just think Sean McVay picks his running backs with the direction of the wind. It's such a Rams move. You've got a massively productive running back who has seemingly done everything you want for your team, and then you just pick the next guy off the rank, and fully expect Blake Corum to have a good season. I think could end up splitting time, but I think that's fine in the modern NFL. Most running backs split time. I think running back importance is slightly higher than wide receiver in that every single year we seem to have an absolute myriad of good wide receivers come out. And I think Blake Corum will be an excellent flex on anybody's team.
Mm-hmm. The real interesting thing about Kyron Williams in particular, and I've said this for quite a while, I don't actually think Kyron Williams is that good. I genuinely think it is the system that he's in, the way he's being told, detailed. This is exactly where you go. This is exactly what you do. I think the system is perfect for a running back. We've seen Cam Akers, who is now pretty much out the league towards the end of the season before last. Cam Akers was a guy that came in, produced almost identical numbers to what we've seen out of Kyron Williams. He was replaced. If Blake Corum is even a hair better than Kyron Williams, like you said, Sean McVay goes with the win. He's not going to care. He's gonna play the hot hand, and I think Corum's got a better chance than a lot of people are saying. Just because I'm not a big Kyron guy, and I'm petty, Richard. I want to be right after calling him not very good last year.
Yeah, look, don't get me wrong. I think Corum is going to come in and have a very productive year. It's so Rams. Like, I just wonder why they're doing it. It's almost like you have that guy who is productive in your season, who's still young, and we just go and get the next one. And I suspect Corum will have a good year or two. Hopefully, you can sell him high, and then he will be replaced.
Yeah, the next guy will come in. I'm still shocked he's not a Charger. That was like the most outside of Caleb. That was like the most nailed on thing for me. It's like he's definitely going to go to the Chargers, and Harbaugh's going to get his guy, but went to the other side of the pond, the other side of LA, right? So he's locked in along with Polk and Adonai Mitchell. Who are your last three guys in the second round, then, Richard?
I'm gonna go first of all. I'm gonna take Ben Sinnott there, and then I'd probably go with Marshawn Lloyd.
Yep,
and then end on Roman Wilson, end on Wilson.
Love it. Let's talk about a guy we haven't really spoken about too much on this show, and I think he's a really good player. Marshawn Lloyd. He does land in Green Bay behind Josh Jacobs, but he's the guy of the future there without doubt for me, right, Richard?
Yeah, sure. I think Josh Jacobs is on a very cuttable contract. As many of these contracts are, it looks big in the headline figures, but they can move on. After the current season without too much pain. Obviously, running back is a position where we see injuries all of the time, although, I'm not going to project an injury.
Yeah.
So, we often see a committee approach. I don't think Marshawn Lloyd has too much of a problem getting to RB2 on that roster. And from RB2, anything can happen. And I think you take the upside of that young running back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great value towards the back end of the second as well. Getting a guy like we mentioned with the others, not your top end guy by any means, but still super solid running back for sure. And that brings us to the end of our 2 rounds. But Richard, we're not letting you go anywhere until you speak about everybody's favorite thing. It's like the trailers in the movies, right? It's sleeper players. Are there any players that you're like, you know what, look out for this guy in your fourth or even later rounds? Anyone you're targeting heavily in those late thirds, fourth rounds?
Yes. So the guy that I think you should really be on the lookout for is we're going back to the Chargers, and they took a running back, I believe, in the fifth, called Vidal. And
Vidal.
As much as I might have said earlier in this pod that I think Lad McConkey has a great chance to catch a lot of balls, a Greg Roman scheme is going to be run first, and they will use the run until it no longer works. And I look at the running backs, and and really it's Ravens cast off. I think Gus Edwards, I love Gus the Bus. To me, he looked like he lost a little bit of a step coming back from an ACL. I think you then have J.K. Dobbins, who, fantastic talent, J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
Didn't really look up to full speed either. Suffered two season-ending injuries in 2 years, an ACL and an Achilles. And, the next guy behind him is that rookie Vidal. So if somebody has a chance to explode, I think it's him.
Yeah, right there with you. And my favorite thing about Vidal is something that I'm sure will go down an absolute treat in that offensive scheme. He's a very good blocker as well, which I'm sure they're going to be looking for. And Edwards is okay, I think, right? But I think Vidal is like he's known for being a real solid blocker. So that's going to get him at least a chance to get on the field. And like you say, he's going up against older, more injury-prone players. So I love Vidal as a sleeper pick there for sure. And Richard, that does sadly bring us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for coming on to the Dynasty Hotseat. Can you just remind everybody where can they find you online and anything you'd like to talk about? Maybe that Ravens Instagram page one more time.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me on. Do check out the UK Ravens Twitter and Instagram.
Absolutely love it. And thank you so much as well for everybody listening. If you've not already, that like and that subscribe button, they're right below, like right there. If you're in full screen, hit that escape button and scroll right down there. I promise you they are there. So see if you can find them and hit them. It does help out an awful lot. So one more time from Richard, from me, Mags, thank you so much for tuning into the Dynasty Hotseat. And remember, for anything Dynasty you need to know, keep it locked on the Certified Inferno. See you next time.